Welcome to Let's Talk, Tony. Dr. Draper.
And Tony is fine. Thank you, Denise, with an I. I really did enjoy that interview with Denise Graves. So I'm glad I was able to listen in on that.
And I know you're proud because, we don't keep it a secret because we do share staff from time to time. And I appreciate, all the mentoring you did with Misha when she was there with you at the Afro. And now she's here with us. And, we continue to do these things with, these young, talented writers. And so I know that was probably a proud moment for you as well.
It was, and you owe me.
All right, I'll work on that. I will work on that. This is my first opportunity here to share your story. One, not only about you and your family, but this book that took time to publish, and now that it's out, and it's such an inspiration, especially to the publishers, but there's so many others who have had an opportunity to purchase the book and to read through those prayers. Tell us. How, first of all, I want to know about the family legacy of the Afro. We just did our anniversary and we talked about legacy. And I mentioned actually in a couple of shows about the legacy of the Afro, 133 years?
Almost 133, 132 years,
Uh-huh.
133 in August. So first of all, congratulations to you on your 60th.
Thank you. Thank you. We're the babies, though. We the teenagers compared to you all.
Most businesses don't last past the first 5 years, and so congratulations on that. So the Afro was founded in 1892 by my great-grandparents. I could spend all of the time that I have today talking about the founding of the Afro, but you would appreciate this, Denise. The $200 in venture capital, that's what I call it, came from my great-grandmother, Martha. And she and her husband, John, had 10 children. He was 52 years old, had been enslaved, a sergeant in the Civil War. And I say he had the unmitigated gall at age 52 with $200 to start a newspaper when reportedly less than 2% of the Black population could read. They had 5 sons, 5 daughters. All of their sons came into the business with the caveat that every daughter received the same salary as the sons. And so we covered everything from that founding in the late 1800s all the way up to the present. And at one time, the Afro, who had his own printing press and employed a couple of hundred folk, union shop at that, had 13 editions up and down the East Coast. Now I tell people, they say, oh, wow, 13 editions. I said, well, now we have hundreds of editions because of technology, right?
Exactly.
We have thousands of stories. We are not a weekly publication. We are hourly publications, daily publications.
Well, I'm so proud to call you my sister publisher and to have the Afro as a sister publication and the work that you all continue to do. But I don't know how you had the time, to pull this book together and tell us about Carl Murphy, your grandfather, and just how you were able. What even inspired you to publish this book?
Well, I had the privilege of actually knowing my grandfather, and I cannot take credit for the compilation of all of his prayers. It started long before me. My mother and her sisters started. Her older sister, Betty Moss, really started compiling the prayers maybe more than 50 years ago. But they were in like a mimeograph form, right? They called it a book. It wasn't a book for sale or for publication, because Carl Murphy wrote prayers on the back of envelopes. He wrote prayers on napkins. He wrote prayers for every occasion. He wrote prayers for family gatherings. He wrote prayers for birthdays and anniversaries. But he also wrote prayers about what was happening in the culture, what was happening in the civil rights movement at the time. And so his oldest daughter kind of pulled some of those prayers together. My mom came along, cut them all apart, and said, okay, we need to do some kind of book about that. And I was helping her at that time. She's cutting these apart. Now, she died in 2007. And she said, now promise me one day you're going to get this book done. A book. I was curious, however, when so we had the prayers, as I said, they're cut up. She's trying to put them into different categories, right? So she makes all these copies.
Uh-huh.
And they're not electronic, by the way. These prayers were typed on a they were handwritten
Right.
typewriter, and they were never input right into any kind of electronic format. So that was tedious on her part. And I said, okay, Mom, I'm going to do this book. But I was curious about what may have prompted Carl Murphy to write the prayers. What was happening in the African American community and culture at the time? So, with the help of one of our archivists, researched our archives, and we're matching as best we can prayers with articles and photos from the Afro. Our Daily Bread loved the idea, and we produced the book. It was published in January of 2025. It took a couple of years. Well, it took a long time for me to say, "Okay, let's get it done," and then 2 or 3 years to actually get it done.
So the thing that's interesting to me too, Tony, is that now your family has produced preachers. You're one, Reverend Bishop Vashti McKenzie
Mhm.
is. I mean, but you produce lawyers. You produce a lot of other professions as well. But Carl Murphy wasn't a preacher, was he?
He was not an ordained preacher
Yeah.
Carl Murphy actually was a professor of German at Howard University. He's a Howard grad and a Harvard grad. And so
Wow.
he taught German at Howard, and on the weekends would go to back to Baltimore to help his dad with the paper. He was the second youngest of five sons, and the one that his dad said, if anything ever happens to me, I'd like for you to take over as the editor, because he would go and do the editing and help with the stories and all of that.
Hmm.
Sidebar, my grandmother, Vashti Turley Murphy, a co-founder of Delta Sigma Theta, was his student, 5 years his senior. So I have another book called No Ordinary Hookup that I published back in 2016 when I found their love letters, right? That's
Oh wow, yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, there's it's such a storied family and a storied and a history. It's just amazing. So, I mean, why prayers as opposed to just journal entries or whatever? What encouraged him or inspired him to
you know
write
what?
prayers?
He wrote such hard hitting editorials, you wouldn't think that he was also one that would write prayers. But he
Hmm.
was a man of great faith. He was a man who served his God. He served his church. He served his family. And when I reflect back on it, we did very little without prayer. I had no idea that he was writing these prayers, though.
Mm-hmm.
But he wrote prayers for everything.
Wow.
A birth of a child, the death of somebody, the changing of a season. W.E.B. Du Bois was his neighbor, and they didn't really get along. But when Du Bois died, he wrote a he wrote a prayer. He wrote a prayer before the March on Washington. He wrote a prayer after the March on Washington. One time, Dwight Eisenhower gave a speech, I assume, and he called us his Negro citizens. So Carl Murphy writes a prayer that says, "Dear God, please tell Mr. Eisenhower we belong to you and not to him." So see, it's that kind of it's those kinds of prayers that he wrote.
And having gone through those prayers and read them and the whole exercise of putting together a book, what did you get out of that experience? How has it sort of informed your life, your message, your ministry, your journalism?
Okay, so let me back up just a little bit. I didn't say
Mhm.
this. His dad, John Henry Murphy Sr., the founder of the Afro, said that a newspaper succeeds because it believes in God, in itself, and in the present generation.
Mm.
He was the superintendent of Sunday schools for the Hagerstown district of the AME Church. And his first publication was not the Afro, it was a publication called the Sunday School Helper. I put that in context because the family raised AME and then, became Episcopalian. So there's a deep um, spiritual foundation, that Carl Murphy grew up and then passed it on to his daughters. He had five daughters, no sons, and to his 16 grandchildren.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's my dad used to say that if the Rolarks had a family reunion, we could hold it in a bathroom, but that's definitely not the case for the Murphys. So,
No,
uh,
no, there are a lot. And all of his siblings didn't have children, but the
Yeah.
ones who did populated the family.
Yeah, yeah. So, where can people get copies of the book? How are you distributing it, or what's the cost? Tell us how we can access it.
So for the first time, this is actually my third book, and I
Oh,
have a
okay,
contract for the fourth one. But for the first time, I did not self-publish. So Our Daily Bread Ministries published this book. It's available wherever Christian books are sold. Amazon.com is easy. Look, it's hard to say which retailers now because we got to figure out which ones we are and which ones we're not. But anyway,
right.
Christian any place that Christian books are sold, Barnes and Noble, for example, they also will have the book. Now, it came when it was released in January. It was like on Amazon like $20, but I checked it out right before this show. I think there's a sale going on. I think people can get it for like $15, $16.
Oh, okay, all right.
Remember, I'm not promoting Amazon because they've got their issues
Okay.
as well. You can get your free shipping, but yes, so
Are
it's
you
available.
you planning to do any book signings in the area anytime soon?
I am, and so I'm gonna follow up with Mahogany Books. You and I talked a little bit about that.
Right.
Somebody recommended Busboy and Poets. I am doing. The Afro has its annual tea on the 26th, so the books will be available there. Also, some other things. Other when I say other things, I did a book signing at Asala,
Okay.
which was
Right.
successful as well. But I will let you know. And really, Denise, I thank you for your support. I don't know if your listeners and viewers know that we also are in business together. The Black press is alive and well. So, Word in Black. I know we're not talking about Word in Black today,
Yeah.
but
Well, we got to give it a shout out because
Word.
it's
I
our
hope you
business.
go to subscribe to the Washington Informer, subscribe to Afro News, it's afro.com. Subscribe to Word in Black. It's free, right? So wordinblack.com and just see what amazing journalism Black owned publications are doing across the country.
Before the two things before we go, and we can't have this discussion right now, but I would love to really talk a little bit more about how this DEI is impacting us in Black-owned media and probably other Hispanic media, LGBTQ media. I mean, we're all being affected by this, and I know that some folks have even challenged the Afro on its name in order to secure funding.
Yeah, they've challenged that. I'm waiting for them to put it in writing before we write a story, right? They challenge that. Here's one thing that I'm trying to be intentional about. We are acronym heavy. Period. That's everything is reduced to an acronym. So when I talk about it, I say I put it in any kind of order. What part of inclusion is it that you're against, or equity? Help me understand what part of diversity is troublesome, because
Hmm.
you can reduce it to an acronym and dismiss us just by an acronym and not really dig deep behind what it means, so I can understand what is it that people who say they are not for diversity, they're not for equity, they're not for inclusion. Okay, so what does that really mean?
Hmm. Hmm. Good point. Tony, before you leave, do you have a brief prayer you can share with us
I
from
do.
Carl Murphy's book?
I absolutely have a brief prayer that I can share. So the chapters are alphabetical. Uh, so this chapter is called gratitude. So it's one of my favorite. I've got a lot of favorite prayers, but this one is called from the chapter on gratitude. So let me check this prayer. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Um, this, if I knew my alphabet, then I wouldn't be looking under freedom for gratitude, would I? I would be. Okay, how
You'd
about
be
this?
right there.
Right
Okay,
there.
all right.
So Carl Murphy wrote these words: "Oh dear God, help us to do the work of the world without bluster or brag or what we call tooting our horn. Let us remember that whatever comforts or material things we accumulate in life are only loaned to us for a season. And when we are inclined to talk of I and glory in me, help us to remember that Thou hast put millions of planets stars and suns in orbit, and so far as we know, they make no sound. Amen.
Amen. Dr. Francis Tony Draper, thank you so very much for being with us, CEO of the Afro News. Congratulations
Thank you.
on the book, Pen and Prayer, and I hope that our viewers
Yeah,
will go and
prayer.
get a copy. Prayer and the Pen. I'm sorry, Prayer and Pen. I got it right that time.
Listen, I wanted to call it pen and prayer too. The publisher said prayer and pen, so you're in good. But thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank your viewers in advance for your support in this environment where people are banning books just for mentioning our
Yes.
accomplishments. We have to support our Black-owned publications and our Black-owned newspapers and books and our institutions. And I am encouraged. If my grandfather could write prayers, if they could do what they did 130 years ago, certainly we can survive these times and not be distracted and get off course.
So with that, I'm going to say farewell and
Farewell.
amen.
All right. Amen. Thanks a lot. All right. See you soon.
All right. Thanks, Tony.
Bye.
Bye-bye.